Everybody, good evening, good morning, good afternoon, wherever you're connecting from. How are you doing? How's everything going, right? So from the last call, we're talking on top analysis, okay? And before we continue on the charts, like I said, the other call ended. So, but before we continue, I would like to explain this concept of accumulation and distribution, or distribution and accumulation. It's going to save us a whole lot of things, okay? So I was just going through the video, of course, and then I said, okay, fine. I think it's best to discuss accumulation and distribution before riding on to discuss every other thing we want to discuss, okay? It's going to help us very well. So let me explain the concept of accumulation. All right. Bullish market structure. So use this bullish market structure example. So what? You bear with me, okay? It's all good. All right, so I'm going to also use, let me draw the bearish market structure somewhere here. Okay. All right, so what is distribution and then what's accumulation? Basic English term distribution is to, I don't want to say distribute, to distribute is to distribute, to accumulate is to accumulate. All right, so but let me use the concept of, let's assume now you have your shop. All right, you have a shop and then you are selling your things or you're just giving them out. Distribute just simply means to give out. Okay, that's what it means to give out. So whenever you have a shop full of goods, you have money full of all those things, and you're distributing, what are you doing that you're giving out? So whenever you have a shop, for example, and you're selling your goods, you're selling your item, what are you doing? You're distributing. You're more like a distributor, okay? So you are distributing items to people, to consumers, and all those things. In other words, you're selling to them. So that act of selling is what we call distribution, okay? So as you're selling, you're giving it out, and you're distributing. The act of buying is now what we call accumulation. All right, as you buy, you tend to get more, you are keeping it, you are stocking in, you're doing all those things, okay? That's what we know as accumulation. So whenever you're distributing, you're selling. Whenever you're buying, you're accumulation. Don't forget that word. Whenever you're selling, you're distributing. Whenever you're buying, you're doing what? Accumulating. All right, so this terminologies is going to really help us very well in terms of understanding structure, top-down analysis, and all those things, because it's a game of liquidity. Forex is a game of liquidity, and then part of what is going to help you succeed very well is an understanding of what this concept is all about: distribution and accumulation. So distribution occurs. I guess I'll have to type, right? So let me just type this out. Distribution occurs distribution occurs forms one device relation performs loads. So, for example, when you hear somebody says sell the high, buy the dip, all right, buy the low, sell the high, and then since distribution is an act of selling, and accumulation is an act of buying, in a structure, like in a bullish structure, in a bearish structure, in any structural point, at the very highs, what we see happen there is evidence of distribution. We see distribution happening at highs in order to take them lows, all right, and then we see accumulation happen at the lows in order to take them highs. And what we know as what took place here is what is known as accumulation, okay? There was a lot of accumulation, so there was a lot of buying that was done to take price higher. And then even at these highs now, what now happened? There was a lot of distribution. Selling took place here. Accumulation is an act of buying, distribution is an act of selling, okay? So, and then at these highs, what happened here? Distribution occurred in order to take price lower, so they sold. At this high, at this low here, what happened? Higher low, right? What happened here? Accumulation occurred, so they bought. At this highs, what happened here? Distribution occurred, so they did what? Sold. At this particular point, what happened here? Accumulation occurred, and then they bought. At this particular point, what happened here? Distribution occurred, and then they did what? We're expecting them to sell and continue to buy, and so on and so forth. So whenever we're talking about distribution and accumulation, and where you hear somebody say, okay, I'm looking for evidence of distribution, what the person is simply trying to tell you is that I'm looking for evidence to buy, or I'm looking for evidence to sell. If it's an accumulation, if it's a distribution, the person is saying, if somebody say, I'm looking for evidence of distribution, the person is only trying to say, I'm looking for evidence before I start selling, or evidence to sell. When the person says, I'm looking for evidence of accumulation, the person is just trying to say, I'm looking for evidence to do what? Accumulate. I'm looking for evidence to do what? To buy. Okay, so distribution occurs at the highs and accumulation occurs at the low. All right, and applicable to a certain place too, even at the high in a certain point, what happens here? Distribution took place in order to take price lower. Accumulation took place here in order to take price up. Distribution took place here in order to take price lower. Accumulation took place here in order to do that, which shows that the buyers they came in now. The sellers they came in here to do what? To distribute. The buyers they came here to buy, and so on and so forth. We're expecting buyers also to come here to do what? To buy, and then the sellers to come here to do what? To distribute. So buyers to come here to accumulate so as to buy. Sellers to come in here to distribute so as to do what? To sell. So that's just what distribution and accumulation it's all about. Okay. So we see distributions form at the highs, and we see accumulation form what? At the lows. So now there are major places where we can expect to see accumulation from, and there are major places where we can expect to see distribution from. For example, in a structural point now, and take note, let me also draw this formula for expansion and retracement, then I'll come back to this, please. When you're looking at expansion and retracement, like we said, this buying leg in a bullish scenario is the expansion phase. So let me give this a green color. Okay, so this is our expansion phase. Whereas the selling leg is what our retracement phase. What the price do, what price did, what it's retraced all the way back here. Okay, it's our retracement phase. And here also is what our expansion phase. The price did what used to buy. And then here is our what retracement phase. The price did what the price do here. They sold here. Okay. And then what can we see again happen here? This also is now our expansion phase where price was creating series of higher highs and higher lows as we looked at that former, what are they calling it now? At the former video we did, right? So here also in this case is our expansion phase. Okay. In this scenario, here's our expansion phase, but it's selling now. So let's use the red color candle for sales. All right. And then here is our retracement. Right, in a selling case, this is opposite of just that of what happens in the buying case. Right, the selling leg will now be expand because in the buying leg now the expansion is to buy, it's expanding to buy, retracing to expand, retracing to expand. Whereas this one is doing what? Expanding to retrace, expanding to retrace, and so on and so forth. Okay, so here price also came here, did what? Expanded here, it sold. Okay, it's right now, right? And then here also what the price do here, price expanded here again. I mean, retraced here. Okay. And then finally did what here again. It expanded here now for a selling case. Okay. Expansion, retracement, and all of these things. Okay. So now, based on our structural points, let me draw this here. So here, what do we have here to be? We have here to be our low. All right, the low formed in the market. Taking out my time to do this so you can get to understand it very, very well. At this point, what do we have here? The high is formed. At this point, what do you have here? You have the higher lows. At this point, At this point, what do you have here? We have the higher highs. Are you serious right now? Okay, at this point, what do you have here? Sorry. At this point, okay. Where is this? The higher low. Then we have here to be what? Alright. Then here in the bearish scenario, we have price to give us what? This higher low. This is the high. Alright. And then after that, we have this what? Low. And then after that, we have this what? Lower high. Then after that, we have this what? Lower low. Then after that, price came all the way to give us what? A lower high. Then after which price came to give us what? lower low. Okay, so this is just how we have our structural point in the forex market. Okay, so we have the higher highs, higher lows, and all this thing. The green parts in the bullish case being the expansion and retracement, phase expansion, and then the red part and retracement for the swing scenario. They happen to be what the expansion, they happen to be the retracement. So whenever we now talk about evidence of accumulation, there is something that normally happens here. All right. So whenever we talk about evidence of accumulation, we tend to see accumulation form below the low. And what's the accumulation? Look at what accumulation and distribution is represented at. So accumulation is just a break of structure to the upside. So whenever you see price coming down like this and break structure to the upside, the whole of this action like this is what we call accumulation. All right. For distribution, all right, is just a break of structure to the downside. So when we see price initially bullish and break structure to now come down, what do we call the whole of all this action here? This is what is known as what? Distribution. So whenever we see somebody is waiting for evidence of accumulation, we're not saying, okay, when price comes to this region, we want to wait to see this evidence, this entire move where price was initially bullish and then bearish and then it broke structure to the upside. So when somebody says, I'm waiting for evidence of accumulation, the person just saying, okay, initially price was creating lower lows, lower highs. I want to see the break of structure, and then I'll enter at the retest. When somebody is saying, I'm waiting for evidence of distribution, maybe price was buying and then the person is looking to sell, which is evidence of distribution. So the person wants to see a break of structure to now take price at the retest and start going. So for this evidence of accumulation, you can now enter from here, stop loss at this week here, and then to take price higher. Okay, for evidence of accumulation, that is where you can take your entry from. All right. And then for evidence of distribution, you can take your entry from here, stop loss at these highs, okay? And then you can now do what? Look to ride price down to sell. Okay, so that is how we consider evidence of accumulation, and that is how we look at evidence of accumulation. So when we say that evidence of accumulation occurs at the highs, and distribution occurs at the highs, and then accumulation forms at the low. So at these very low points here now, what can we find here on the lower time frame? You can find evidence of accumulation. The price was selling before they gave this evidence here to now take price at this very high. What you are going to see on the lower time frame is what we know as evidence of distribution. Where price broke structure to now ride all these things down. At this low point on the lower time frame, you will see evidence of what here? Accumulation before price now started doing what? Going up. At this particular high is also, you will see evidence of what? Distribution before price will now start doing what? Coming low. Same thing applicable here for accumulation, same thing applicable here for what? Distribution. Same thing applicable here for what? Distribution, price distributed to sell, all right, here, and then accumulated over here, right? It was coming down and then gave us this evidence here, the break of structure, all right, here, to now buy accumulation. At this point, what the price do? Price distributed here, all right. At this point, price accumulated, price was distributed here, price accumulated. All right, so you always want to now watch out for evidence of accumulation and evidence of distribution at the highs and the lows formed. All right, so having said this, in a bullish market, after price gives you a low and then comes to give you a high, you can wait until you see this evidence of what? Distribution before you can now start selling this market to possibly take you to here. And then when you now see the evidence of accumulation, you can now look to do what? Take price higher and then do what? To get price here. So after price has formed the higher low, higher, what can you wait for? You can wait for evidence of distribution, so you can now take price what's lower, right, to now give you this other point. So at the higher structural point, what do you want to be looking for? Evidence of distribution. And the lower structural point, what do you want to be looking for? Evidence of accumulation. So whenever we are doing our top-down analysis, so this is how somebody can now write a buy from here and take even a sell from here, and even buy. I've played ping pong like that in the market before, where I bought here, sold here, bought here again, I sold here, I even bought here again. I think up to 3 times at a row. I bought, I sold, and then I finally bought again. You can also do the same thing here, right? You sell from here. After price comes all the way down, once you see evidence of accumulation, all right, which is means to buy, you can now take this buy to the upside and then wait for evidence of distribution, having marked out your fibs and all those things, okay? Now, this is where you now want this distribution to happen at the premium zone. You want this to happen at a discount zone in the buying scenario. Okay, so having marked this out, you now want to wait for evidence of what distribution to take place for you to sell from where? From this place. Once price forms and creates what a lower low, you can be looking for what evidence of also what accumulation for you to take price to now give you what a lower high. Look for evidence of distribution for you to take price to give you what a lower low, and so on and so forth. That is what evidence of accumulation and distribution does. All right. So just go, you can go over through this video again and just get it stopped. All right. So over to our next video now, which is a continuation of that last one. We're now going to see how we can do this top-down analysis, and you will see how accumulation and distribution plays out from units in structure. Because even having considered structure, to be able to enter trade, you need to see this evidence of accumulation and evidence of distribution. All right. Sorry for the whole network interruptions at some point, and that is going to be that for that. All right. Thank you so much, fam. So see you in the next call.